Moonraker is the fourth Roger Moore James Bond movie, and I'm excited to give you guys my review for this movie. If you're new here, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. As well, if you want to check out my previous reviews for the other James Bond movies, I'll have a playlist up where you can go check those reviews out. Now let's get into this review for Moonraker. So Moonraker is the James Bond film where James Bond goes to space because Star Wars had just come out and the people making this were like, okay, we gotta send James Bond to space. And they did. And for me, that's not actually the worst part of this movie. For me, the worst part of this movie is that it's actually really boring. And I think a lot of people probably don't feel that way. I think they dislike it for other reasons. But for me, it's really boring. This is actually one of my least favorite Bond films. Not quite the worst in my opinion, but it's like bottom 5 for me, at least right now it is. But this movie is just really boring. Like I said, yes, they go to space, which is like, okay, this movie's not grounded at all because Bond's in space, but with what they're doing in this movie, it kind of fits the movie. Sort of where it lost me a bit more was when they're the blasters from Star Wars. That part of the space portion definitely was a little bit over the top and too science fiction-y for my liking for this franchise, but the rest of it, I was watching it again, I'm like, yeah, this is actually pretty boring. Like even some of the action fight sequences are just sort of meh, like pretty forgettable. Like there's one fight scene that takes place in Rio where they're on these like lifts between mountains, and that could have been very exciting, but I was watching it, I'm like, there's just no excitement, no intensity to this. So Roger Moore himself was once again good in this. Most of the cast is pretty good, although I thought the Bond woman, the main Bond woman in this, I thought she was kind of flat with her performance. Some of the line deliveries are like, she's supposed to be like concerned or just giving like an intense reaction or something, and it just comes off as flat. So that I thought was the weakest performance. The villain himself is alright. I thought he worked for the movie. Performance was pretty good, but another villain, sort of like The Spy Who Loved Me, is not a villain I particularly remember. I really just remember this movie because it's the one that Bond goes to space. The rest of the movie, like I said, pretty boring, pretty forgettable. They bring back Jaws, the henchman from The Spy Who Loved Me, which I think was a mistake. I think they should have just left him in The Spy Who Loved Me because he just didn't work as well in this movie, and I think it's because they went a bit campier with him. Like The Spy Who Loved Me was definitely not without its campy, goofy moments with that character, but he was a bit more menacing in that movie, and this didn't really feel any of that. I think part of it's because we've seen him before, and yeah, they do goofier stuff with him in this right from the get-go in the opening scene where he and Bond are having this fight while skydiving, which that action scene was actually pretty decent, I would say. You could tell there's, stunt doubles, but for the most part it was pretty good. But he's falling and his parachute breaks and he's doing the, arm flapping, and then just falls in the middle of a circus where they got that, the trapeze, the big trampoline thing, so he doesn't die. That was a bit much, and that's right from the get-go takes away the menacing part of him. And then they went and added this whole love story for the character Jaws, where he sort of becomes a good guy at the end. Yeah, that was, I think, taking the goofiness a bit too far in this movie. Like the henchmen, I just enjoy menacing henchmen that can be, big physical threat to Bond, have some great action scenes. Jaws was very iconic from the last movie, but this one I'm just like, I think he should have just gone with a different henchman because it just didn't work as well. And like I said, the rest of the movie is pretty boring. The plot itself, Bond has to investigate this missing rocket that's a Moonraker rocket that belongs to the villain, and it's the villain who's behind why it went missing. Okay, that storyline I thought was fine. Feels like a classic Bond storyline, at least for that era. So that was fine. There are some really good locations like Rio. And the actual final act where they do go to space, I thought was fine. I think it's a bit better than the rest of the movie. Like, it's entertaining, even though it's sort of kind of ridiculous. Like, you can kind of buy into it, that for what the story's doing, that they would go there. And they do have certain things that set up that it would be possible, because it's Bond and the Bond woman that go up there, and they do set up that she is fully trained to, you know, be in a rocket and all that. But it was entertaining. Over the top when they added in like the laser blasters from like Star Wars. But overall, this movie's really forgettable. I know some people have a fun time with it. For me, I used to enjoy it more, but as I've rewatched it, it just becomes more boring for me. Sort of the same way I felt with The Man with the Golden Gun. I enjoyed it more when I was younger, but as I've rewatched and gone older, I don't like it quite as much as I used to. This is sort of the same for me. This for me is worse than The Man with the Golden Gun. Like I said, this is one of my least favorite Bond films. It's just very boring, very forgettable, and as ridiculous as the idea is that Bond goes to space when this is a relatively grounded franchise, it can be over the top, but that went really over the top. It was, you'd think it'd be much more memorable than that. Like, maybe just go full into it a bit more, because like the first couple acts are like pretty dull actually. So guys, if you have seen Moonraker, let me know what you thought about it. Like I said, there's quite a few people who do enjoy it, so maybe you do, or maybe you're like me, just either thinks it's boring or just dislikes it for other reasons. For me, I give this movie a 50%. So that's my little review of Moonraker. Be sure to stay tuned for some upcoming videos. My next review should be of Mr. Harrigan's Phone, the new Netflix movie. And I'll have some other videos coming out after that as well. So again, if you're new here, be sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. And until my next review, take care everybody.